Imagine for a moment that you stumbled upon a letter in your attic, purportedly written by your great-grandfather, a man you deeply admired but never met. The letter is filled with profound wisdom, encouragement, and stories that resonate deeply with your family's values. However, as you delve deeper, you begin to notice discrepancies in the handwriting and inconsistencies in the stories. What would you do? Would you still cherish the letter for its wisdom? Or would the knowledge that it might be a forgery taint your perception? This scenario, while personal, mirrors a broader debate in the study of the New Testament, particularly regarding the letters attributed to Paul and the Gospels. The question of authorship and authenticity is not just a matter of historical curiosity. It has profound implications for those who venerate the New Testament as a sacred text. For liberal readers of the Bible, the issue of pseudonymous texts is often approached with a mix of curiosity and openness. They may recognize that some letters, such as the Pastoral Epistles, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus, were not actually written by Paul, but still find value in their content. These readers are more likely to focus on the messages and teachings within these texts, appreciating them for their literary and theological insights. They might argue that the spirit of Paul's teachings is present, even if the authorship is not genuine. For them, the content and the impact of the text are more important than the exact historical details. However, for conservative readers, the problem is far more acute. The commitment to the full inspiration and inerrancy of the Bible means that the idea of pseudonymous or fraudulent texts is deeply troubling. The traditional approach for conservative Christians is to deny that such texts are pseudonymous, often arguing that the claim of authorship by an apostle like Paul is the best evidence of its authenticity. They might point to the belief that the Word of God does not lie, and therefore, any text that claims to be by Paul must indeed be by him. This stance, while providing a sense of certainty, can sometimes overlook the historical and textual evidence that suggests otherwise. A milder version of this argument is that the Deutero-Pauline letters, those written in the spirit of Paul by his immediate disciples, are still valuable because they capture the essence of Paul's teachings. This perspective allows for a degree of flexibility while maintaining the authority of the texts. For example, Colossians and Ephesians, while not universally accepted as genuinely Pauline, are often seen as having a Pauline flavor and containing inspiring passages. The famous words from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 to 8. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. From now on there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not only to me but also to all who have longed for his appearing. However, the question of whether a text can be both uplifting and fraudulent is a complex one. In the world of art, a forgery might still be admired for its beauty and skill, but the knowledge of its inauthenticity can diminish its value. Similarly, a religious text that is pseudonymous can still contain valuable ideas and teachings, but the fact that it is not genuinely authored by the person it claims to be can affect how it is perceived and valued. The pastorals, for instance, have no place in reconstructing the thought of the historical Paul. but they can still be studied for their own theological and literary value. The challenge lies in balancing the appreciation of these texts with the recognition of their historical context and authorship. The issue of pseudonymous works being religiously authoritative is further complicated by how one defines the authority of biblical books. Are they authoritative because they are by specific authors, such as Paul, or because they are included in the Bible? If the former is true, then establishing that a letter is pseudonymous would likely reduce or annul its authority. If the latter is true, then the question of authorship might be considered less relevant. In practice, many Christians adopt a blend of both perspectives, which can sometimes lead to incoherence. For example, a newly discovered letter that could be authentically Pauline might be given more authority than the pastorals, even though both are part of the New Testament. The debate over the priority of certain letters within the New Testament is not just theoretical, but has practical consequences for the churches. Lutherans, for instance, have historically placed a higher value on Romans and Galatians, which emphasize justification by faith alone, over James, which seems to teach salvation by works. This ideological preference has shaped how these letters are interpreted and applied in Christian practice. Similarly, the issue of women's leadership in the church has led to different interpretations of 1 Timothy, with conservative opponents often citing it to argue against women in leadership roles, while more liberal believers might argue that 1 Timothy is not genuinely Pauline and therefore less authoritative. Turning to the Gospels, the situation is similarly complex. Paul's letters provide only a few details about the life of Jesus, focusing more on his death, resurrection, and the implications for Christian faith. The Gospels, on the other hand, offer a more detailed narrative of Jesus' life, teachings, and miracles. However, the question of their authorship and the reliability of their accounts is a subject of ongoing debate. The traditional view that the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses is not supported by the evidence. The titles, according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, and according to John, were added later, and the actual authors are unknown, even if some of the traditional attributions are correct, such as Mark being the interpreter of Peter's reminiscences. This still places the authors at a remove from the events they describe. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, share a similar perspective on Jesus' life and teachings, while John's Gospel presents a different and more theological account. The differences among the Gospels, such as the timing of the cleansing of the temple and the date of Jesus' death in relation to Passover, highlight the complexity of their origins. Scholars have long debated the relationships among the Gospels, with most agreeing that Mark was written first, followed by Matthew and Luke, who used Mark as a source. John, written later, may or may not have been influenced by the synoptics. The process by which the stories and sayings of Jesus were transmitted and eventually recorded is a subject of extensive study. Form criticism, a method developed in the mid-20th century, examines the individual units of the Gospels to understand their role in early Christian teaching and preaching. While this approach has provided insights into the conventions of different types of stories, It has also raised questions about the historical reliability of the Gospels. The Gospel writers, rather than being mere collectors of oral traditions, were likely creative interpreters who shaped the material to serve the needs of their communities. In conclusion, the debate over the authorship and authenticity of New Testament texts is a complex and multifaceted issue. It touches on fundamental questions of faith, history, and the nature of religious authority. For some, the content and message of these texts are more important than the exact details of their authorship, while for others, the historical and textual evidence is crucial. The challenge is to find a way to appreciate and learn from these texts, while being honest about their origins and limitations. Understanding this debate can deepen our appreciation of the New Testament and the rich tapestry of early Christian thought and practice.